Send me your poor, your huddled masses, and bring cash. You're watching Tech Strong Gang. Hey everyone, happy Tuesday and welcome to our Tuesday Tech Strong Gang. We've got a great lineup of topics and even a better lineup of people for this wonderful Tuesday. Let me introduce you to our gang members. We have JP Morgenthal, Wickey Wang, Mitch Ashley, and the Dean Mike Vizard. Gang, it was a bit of a crazy weekend and Monday. It seems we have a new philosophy in the U.S., a country that was built on immigrants and immigration. Anybody could come in as long as you have the money, right? The H1B visas are now $100,000 a year, but you could buy the Willy Wonka golden visa for $1 million. My goodness. But anyway, Mike, why don't you take this? What are we doing here?
So here's the deal. So they announced, Trump administration, that it will cost you $100,000 to get an H1B visa a year. However, if you are already here under said program, that will be grandfathered in essentially, and you won't have to pay this particular fee. So it may wind up that a lot of folks will just wind up staying here for a long period of time. It was kind of a chaotic announcement. The executive order went out and then everybody flipped out. And then there was clarifications as to what the president really meant to say, the usual kind of thing. And these days in the Trump administration, it seems like. But the other thing about this program, it's interesting. This move is getting praised by both the left and the right. There are people who like this thing. The H1B visa program itself has been controversial for as long as anybody remembers. 70% of these visas go to folks from one country, primarily from India. And a lot of folks have said this whole program needed to be revamped, maybe tossed in favor of something else. But I feel like we're just kind of doing our usual heavy hammer approach to solving issues.
Well, I think what we've got here is President Trump has said to his tech bro supporters, how do you like me now? Because this is certainly a arrow in the heart to the tech world, right? The tech world is probably the single biggest user of H1B visas and has been forever, and for good reason. You know, I don't care if people are of Indian or Southeast Asian or Chinese or Singapore or Filipino or Eastern Europe or wherever they come from. If they have good talent and skills that helps keep this country preeminent in technology, we need to use them. We should have a mechanism of bringing them in. You want to attach money to it? $100,000 a year? A year. That's $300,000 over the life of most of these H1B visas, Mike, are 3 years, I believe. Mm-hmm. So even your point about the grandfathered in, I think it only counts for the rest of their 3-year term. When they go to get a new one or renew it, they're on the $100,000 a year system too. So let's say what this really is. This is eliminating the H1B visa as a means of bringing in skilled workers. So we'll be able to get people who went to Utah for a half a semester, dropped out and went to electrical school, and ask them to be the next generation of coders in this country. Because we don't have enough people who are taking those kind of skilled classes and training. We don't have enough STEM people. And so what we're really doing here is we're taking what the Trump administration itself has set out to be the golden egg, our tech leadership, our tech preeminence in AI and quantum and cloud and everything else, and saying we're going to cut off the pipeline of fresh blood, of new talent, of skilled workers coming in here because we want Americans in flyover stamp with a high school diploma to take these jobs.
I don't think the jobs are going to come to the US. I think most companies who are using these programs are
We're
just
going
going
to
to
move out.
back to where those people are. So it'll just mean more of the development work will move to India because they won't have as many people here working, on the same time zone as somebody who, normally it's somebody working for an outsourcing firm who's working for some, enterprise company, and they just wanted somebody in the same time zone. So they use these visas. But I think we'll just do more of this quote unquote globalization and just put the workload back to where those people are in the first place, which is probably going to be somewhere in India.
And that's antithesis to what the Trump administration wants, right? They're anti-globalists.
It does seem that they are ignorant to the impact long term, right? This is an opportunity to build the knowledge here. And I don't think they fully understand or have thought through the impact to the programs and what's going to happen in the US. Now, some will say that perhaps this is part of their underlying plan. I tend to feel that there is a potential for some chaotic shift in what they're trying to achieve. Much more isolationism. Again, it's like circa 1940, before World War II, we were very much an
The
isolationist.
30s.
Yeah, but we don't. And the problem is, you have a 1940s run the country mentality in a 2000 era technology world,
So,
and you can't
JP, let
shut
me
it off.
just, it's not the 40s. The 40s was already World War II and it was Roosevelt. This is really the 20s leading to something called the stock market crash of 29, right? It's the tariff bills, the anti-immigration, the isolationism. That all happened in the 20s. And as a result, we had the Great Depression, right? By the 40s, Roosevelt had already put 10 years of trying to build things back up here. And I'm sorry, I just
No,
want to correct you on
but
that.
it's funny because I always associate isolationism with our desire not to enter the war until we were forced into it, right?
The problem is by then we had so shrunken our military and our industrial capacity that it took us years.
I'll tell you what I hated about this program. It was basically the United States government coming up with a method that would enable companies to depress the salary levels of IT folks artificially, right? Because now suddenly I had somebody else coming in from overseas who was going to do a gig at a lower cost. And that might have been maybe good for the end customer if that got passed along to them or not. Who knows? But it most certainly depressed the level of salary that could be commanded by other IT professionals in this country. And that's not something the United States government should be involved in.
I think that's been the big criticism of the program.
I think historically, I don't know if that's still true. You know what? India is not the cheapest place to get software engineers anymore. You might be better off going to Eastern Europe or the Philippines or Vietnam or something like that.
Well, let's face it, a company's going to have to really want somebody to pay that kind of money to bring them in per year, right? So does it bring in the elite of the elite, or does it bring in the elite of the family treasure chest to bring you into the state? Probably some of both. But I think that's the main criticism that they're going after. But it begs the question of, well, why do we even have one anyway? If that's really the purpose, is to keep American jobs. Keep American jobs. I'm not saying we should do this. I'm just saying it's a bit of a counter. Yeah, I understand that's what you want to do, but you're now creating an even greater class social system of people who can't afford, or companies who can't afford. So, they're paying good money after that $100K a year or whatever $1 million the golden ticket is to get these people here.
I mean,
I'd
I'm
want to
sorry, go
add
ahead,
something
Wickey.
here, right? Because I'm the first generation immigration, and I was a H1B holder. So I specifically checked this one when I first heard of it's a shock news, right? But it ended up like this rules only applying for the people who try to apply the H1B overseas. So people within United States still keep the old rules, I think. But it do have some impact for the startup who has a shortage on the technology talent. If you think back why we have H1B, right? There are a class of workers like United States has shortage. They don't have enough people, so they offer this kind of visa. But now, if you increase application fee, shortage is still shortage. I don't feel it will bring the job back to the United States, but let's see. This my kind of feel.
I don't disagree. To be clear, the $1 million golden ticket is not an H-1B visa. For $1 million, they give you the full on
Right.
visa.
I would just say that, compared to what some folks are commanding for AI salaries these days, 100 grand is nothing.
Well, that's a good point. Yeah. For someone like that, sure, they're paying way over that to get that kind of talent now.
Yeah, well, but here's the bigger issue, guys. What it really is we hung a giant for sale sign on the Statue of Liberty, right? Because that's America under this administration. Everything's for sale. You want to give 50 grand to the Department of Homeland Security secretary, and he'll get you some influence. Don't worry, they'll quash that. We're not going to do that investigation. You want to find out what's going on with poverty and stuff? I'm very sorry we canceled that report. We'll let you know when we have something else out. You want to know what the latest job numbers and everything is? Well, we'll let you know. It's not important. You don't need to know. You want something, just write. You got your checkbook, pull it out, and you're good. You don't have a checkbook? How about buying some Trump coin, Bitcoin or crypto, and you can get your way there too. You want to export some AI chips that are forbidden? Not a problem. Buy some more coins.
So
this is a real problem.
Before you get too far on that particular soapbox, but there is one thing on this thing that is going to be problematic. The administration has a tendency to come up with exceptions. And so somebody's going to go down to Mar-a-Lago, hang out for a little bit, and suddenly there's going to be a half-price sale on visas.
It's called Taco Tuesday here on the gang.
I do prefer the skyrocket before the stuff starts. Yeah.
So, I mean, and like everything else, right? So there was a time, and I'm talking as a government and politics major now, you can't rule by fiat. You can't rule by executive order. There comes a time where the Congress the legislature has to approve these things. Now, I get it that they're all in lockstep with the Fuhrer, but when are we going to have some congressional action on this? Right? This is, and one of the lower courts all will claim, hey, you got to do this, is exceeding your power. You got to go to Congress. Now, who knows what the Supreme Court will do? Well, we all know what the Supreme Court will do. They're just, the latest kangaroos. But this is not the way this government's supposed to work. I'm sorry.
The interesting thing about it too, Alan, is that with this, the outcomes are measurable, right? How many, if we're not issuing those jobs or visas, how many people are we hiring overseas to stay overseas? If we're not issuing those visas, how many people fill those jobs from the American side, from the U.S. citizens side of the equation?
Yeah, but let me give you so that's the moderate response. Let me give you the extreme response. How many companies are made overseas, in China, in France, in name the countries, who now say, hey, don't bother with those crazy Americans and their $100,000 visas. Come work for me. Come work for me. We're doing exciting things. We're investing more in R&D. the rest of the world doesn't want to play with them anyway. They want to here you'll be able to play with the rest of the world, and before you know it, your preeminence in tech is up in smoke.
I mean, we already see it with the digital sovereignty
Yeah,
actions that companies are
all
taking.
the European companies. Yeah, I
Sushi just
wrote an
signed the
article.
Eurostack, which is an agreement to create a European technology stack, and that's just one of many.
Seuss
Right?
just came out with an offering in it as well.
Mhm.
You're going to see more and
Yeah,
more of
Alan, I
this.
totally agree with you, right? I normally do not like to talk about political part, or I like tech, right? But it's kind of interesting. You see all those series of way people treat, like how to manage country, like how to manage P&L, right? I feel like those are totally different
Agree.
systems.
Yeah, no, they really are. All right. Hey, I think we've made our point. Let's take a break here and come back and talk about what's Google doing with Chrome. First they were selling it, now they're not selling it. Now what? You're watching TechStrong Gang.
Discover TechStrong Group, the epicenter of tech innovation. We're your go-to for reaching IT leaders and practitioners worldwide. Our secret? Impactful content that sparks awareness, engagement, and top-quality leads. With us, you'll access editorial websites, streaming videos, virtual events, custom content, analyst research, and more. Join our satisfied clients. Let's revolutionize your tech journey. Contact us today and tell your story to the world in the most powerful way with TechStrong Group.
Hey folks, we're back, and as Alan was talking about, yeah, Google is now at least foreshadowing what they intend to do with AI and the Chrome browser. And I guess maybe this is a little bit of an exercise in trying to freeze the market somewhat, JP. I mean, it seems to me like a lot of these features I looked at in here seem pretty cool, but it doesn't seem like they're going to show up anytime soon.
Well, I mean, they're already starting to show up. I actually like the direction overall from an architecture. I think it's really, I think it's happening already, except people are now having to cut and paste in order to enable this kind of activity. So they will do a search, they'll find some additional information, and then they probably will deep research it in a LLM application. And so all this is doing is saying, um, let's integrate the two steps right into one activity, which is what I think people want. They want a user experience. Now, the question is because with Google Chrome, is how long is it before somebody steps up and says, this is a monopolistic, you need to open it up and make it pluggable. I mean, I'm surprised they even didn't do that from the get-go based on what we learned from Microsoft and IE years ago, right? And it's like, do you really, are you really going to force us to go to court? And you're going to get, and waste, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars on legally being told that, yeah, you need to open up the API so that OpenAI can plug in their LLM into this functionality, right? Or maybe we just end up with the browser wars again. Oh, you don't want to let me in your door? Fine, I'll create my own because hey, Chromium is free. By the way, Microsoft's Edge is already based on it, right? It's not difficult to take the Chromium base and build your own browser. So are we going to see the Anthropic browser? Are we going to see the OpenAI browser? So we Google gets sued and they get told make it an open API so everybody can users can make the choice what engine they want to use as part of this functionality, or we see a new browser war emerging because everyone's like, fine, if that's what Google's going to do, then I'll just create my own Chromium for my LLM. I think both are really. I would like to see the more open one, obviously, right? Plug in the one that I like best. Perhaps even allow multiple, like, for this particular search, I would like to use Sonnet, but for this other one, I'd like to use Gemini, and have that option, right? So that I get different responses. I can see the alternatives We all know that different LLMs respond differently anyway. So isn't that part of the research effort? But overall, let's take away the um, politics, if you will, of the industry, right? And the maneuvering, and just look at what it is technologically. I think it's a phenomenal, it makes the browser much more useful. Plus, I think it starts to reduce the fears that people will have that browsers are going away. Everything is going to become LLM searches, right? So it doesn't even matter anymore. We don't see the search returns anymore. It all gets analyzed by an LLM, and then you just see the results. So this is a way of saying, no, you still going to do search, but you're integrating in this intelligence to help expand and understand that information better. And I like that model. I like that. I think that's a good model for the general user.
So, JP, I agree and disagree. First of all, the courts today aren't what the courts were when Internet Explorer was kind of, hogtied. The only way a court is going to come down on Google and force them to do things on Chrome is if the suit's over in the EU.
I agree with that. Yeah,
That's number one.
But that's where it's likely going to happen.
That's the only place that'll have any teeth. But secondly, here's how I see it. Google got a get out of jail free card with Chrome. They got away with being a monopoly, but they're still allowed to keep Chrome. They may open some stuff up, great. But what they do see is that there is a new generation of browsers that are going to throw the cards in the air and we'll see who the new winner is. You've got the Perplexity one. OpenAI is coming out with one. I'm sure the rest of them are not far behind. And so, this was an arms race. Google had to up their game to compete with these up and coming, new generation of browsers. And if you're Google, what's your biggest ace in the hole? That you are already the dominant browser. So you're not going to give that up, right? And so you're just going to kind of build.
Willingly.
No, you're going to have to pry it out of their cold dead hands. But so they're going to make Chrome an AI browser to compete with this next generation. Now, here's the thing where I really disagree with you. This ain't about search. This is not about search. I think AI search is going to overtake Google search. It already is growing 3.5 times faster. I see it on our Google Analytics for all of our websites, how much search is coming from AI and Perplexity and so forth. What it really becomes is this AI browser becomes the new UX to do your work. Not just search. Your apps live in there, your work in there. It becomes the new desktop. And that's what Google, you've got Google, the whole Google, what's the Google Office called, Mitch? I forget.
Workspace. But they've already done that. It's already embedded in Workspace.
Yes, it is. Google. But Workspace may not be the dominant workspace. If I've got let's say OpenAI comes out or Perplexity has an AI-powered workspace.
I think the way to think about it, Alan, I agree with what you're saying. We've talked about this, you and I. Atlassian even bought a browser, the browser company, right?
Atlassian.
In anticipation of this, which is the expectation is that browsers shift from searching content on the internet to actually managing, directing, and consuming what AI does for you, right? Whether you're managing the bots and the tasks and the things that are happening, what's going on across the different tabs on your browser, you're not switching between them. But doing searches maybe doing tasks for you, all that kind of thing. But the application kind of providers, the people writing code, see that this is a threat because if Google now controls what you can present to the end user for their apps, then they lose, right? And they may not put in the functionality that an Atlassian or whoever else wants. And that's the threat about this, which is, do you want Google to win that war? Do you want Microsoft to win that war? Do you want a Perplexity to win that war?
So instead of SaaS, we have BaaS, browser as a service, where and that's your front end. Mike, go ahead.
I think it's already happened. I'm sitting here on Google Chrome as we record this, and I'm looking around all my little apps, and I think I can see this incy bincy tiny little Microsoft Store icon somewhere on the lower left hand side, and that's about all I see of Microsoft on this screen right now. And I think the apps guys are going to use browsers just to really park Microsoft as a back end client enabling technology. And then to your point, everything on the back end is just going to wind up being a service, because I don't need a GUI to go access the CMS. It's all going to come through the browser.
I think it makes it much more difficult to determine is pick your poison, pick Google or Microsoft, whoever, is the browser, the new AI browser, is it favoring that provider's content? Because it's no longer the list and the order and what shows up in a search result, right? It's the Gemini interface to start with. That's at least what it looks like today. It'll look different over time, but I think it sort of obfuscates what's happening behind the scenes.
Well, don't forget on the back end, there are now like robots.txt, which used to tell the browser what you can and can't take. There are now files that tell AI what you can and cannot take. And this is a lot more this is a lot more strict than the robots.txt was, because actually it benefited people to have their content show up in a search. But they know that when AI is the middleman, that their content is often masked, and the source of that information is not necessarily, even if there's transparency, may not even get recognized, right? Because the reader doesn't actually care where it came from so much as the content itself. So people are going to be much more strict about what they allow these AI, engines, the LLMs, to go and see on their sites. And so, I mean, the question, if you go down that path, you end up with less content being able to actually fulfill the requests that are being made.
I think about it this way too, JP. Does pick a company, does Salesforce and Slack want Google to know what their AI is doing within the browser workflow? Is all part of that. Yes, they can track some of that today with browsers, but not to the degree I think you could in the next generation AI.
But Mitch, so they're more comfortable with Perplexity tracking it?
Well, maybe. It's a good
I'll tell you,
Today, until Perplexity becomes a threat.
well, they can
Wiki,
at least buy Perplexity.
guys, Wiki had something to say earlier. I
Sorry,
don't know.
Wiki, I didn't mean to cut you
I
off.
totally agree with you guys, right? Like the browser actually is an interface to agent as well, right? Because I believe there are several, three ways. Like in future, you can integrate with AI agent and make it to a gate for the AI agent, and browser is one of them. And that's what important company they try to have the browser product, so they can control the future of the AI agent as well.
So I am concerned about the following scenario, right? So more and more AI slop gets created using Gemini, and then Gemini starts to rank that stuff higher because, well, Gemini created it, so therefore Gemini must think it's okay. And at the end of the day, we wind up with this, unvirtuous cycle of slop that's popping up in everything.
Well, that's all part of the balkanization of the internet, right? Because then Croatia's better than Serbia, which is better than Montenegro, which is better than Kosovo. I forgot all my little parts of Yugoslavia. But, this is what happens is when you go to Google land, or maybe a better analogy is Lord of the Rings. When you go to Google land, Google search rules. But when you are on Perplexity, you have a different algorithm for searches. Forget algorithm. You have a different favorite for searchers. And OpenAI and everyone else has it. So it's
I want JP's thing, but I want, like, maybe if I can figure out how to do it, I'd like to have 2 or 3 of them going at the same time so I could see what they were generating and compare.
well, but this reminds me of, was it Einstein? Was it Salesforce was doing Einstein? Where you could plug like any LLM into the back end of it.
Yeah.
Kind of a
May-
broker for the LLMs. Yeah.
Right. Maybe that. And maybe if these guys don't play nice, some new company we don't know of yet comes out with an open Chromium-based browser that does have sort of an Einstein layer.
All right.
And people who care about these things go out and adopt that.
Or there's a memo from the EU on its way.
Yeah, actually, on the investment side as well. I see a lot of great startups recently come up in this area.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Absolutely. All right, let's take a break. We're going to come back here and talk about our C block, data center court battles, the NIMBYs hire lawyers. And now the empire strikes back. You're watching TechStrong Gang.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSecOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
All right, this may come as a surprise to you, but there are lawsuits being generated now around all these data center projects. And there's one in Michigan that's kind of interesting because the people who are proposing to build a data center are now suing the township that passed a vote essentially among their leadership of the council that said that they could not zone this area to run data centers. And now it's going to become a court battle, I guess, for as long as we can go. And Alan, and I'll go to Mitch on this first, but I'll come back to you in a minute for your legal opinion. But Mitch, are we going to see more and more of these things? And I am reminded of, in my own town, some developer built a house that was far exceeded the zoning laws, and then they built it anyway, and then they dared the town to sue them, and the town didn't have a whole lot of money, so that house still sits there.
Well, I can kind of relate to this one. Maybe that's why you're coming to me as the Nebraska boy. Do I want, that nice green farmland right behind my house or if I live out in the country, do I want that overtaken by a data center? And that's essentially what the case is here in Saline, Michigan. You're welcome to the TechStrong Gang. We're talking about you folks. They're claiming the data center builder, Related Digital, is claiming that the council did something illegal in changing the zoning laws. It's not letting them build their 250 acre plus hyperscaler data center. Not the first lawsuit we're going to see about this. There's a lot of legalese going to get being paid to do these kind of lawsuits, I think. And we'll see. The problem is you're talking about local jurisdiction, local rules. This isn't just some, national threat or national lawsuit, excuse me, that you can kind of say, well, if it worked there, we can go after and do the same thing in all these other locations. No, they all have their own laws and jurisdictions and rules and councils and all that kind of thing. So it sounds kind of like a big mess to me.
Yeah. I mean, well, Mike, you asked for a legal opinion. Look, towns are free to make their own zoning laws, and there's nothing more local than zoning, right? You don't have federal zoning laws. Well, a hub zone or something like that, an economic development zone. But, building zoning laws are really the epitome of local ruling. However, my only point is, and I don't know enough about this case is this an ex post facto law? In other words, did they enact the law after everything was all set and approved and done, and then kind of pulled the rug out from under them, right? That will not stand. You can't go ex post facto on this, right? You can't say today you can do it, and then you rely on that and spend money and do everything, and then say, change our mind, JK, right? And we changed our mind. So absent of that, I think you're going to see a lot of towns doing this. I mean, who wants a Manhattan-sized data center in the middle of your greenfield? And you know, I've written a few articles. Some might still be in the queue on this for TechStrong IT, but you know, this data center boom, it's driving up our electric rates. You and I and everyone out here are paying more money in electricity because the utilities have to increase their capacity to you know, pay to light up these data centers. A liquid water-cooled data center uses like something like can use up to 2 million gallons a day of water, right? So if you're in a water-challenged area, you've got that. Like, and Phoenix wants to be the head of, you know, the big data center capital. Where do they have the water for this? So you're going to see local townships and local legislatures and local governments say, hey, it's not worth it. It doesn't create that many jobs. We were sold a bill of goods. It's not worth it. And they're going to try to change things. Is this the right way by doing it as a zoning thing after the fact? If it was after the fact, I don't know.
Different firms will have different reactions, though. El Paso last week just approved the data center project narrowly, but
if you were in El Paso, you would too.
I did check, and they this part of the country, this township or whatever, did have a master plan. This area was apparently designated as agriculture.
Oh, okay.
Agricultural. Now I don't know. I didn't quite see how a data center is agricultural, but of course. Is it an industrial? Is that the kind of zoning you need to do? I think what's going to happen is that we'll see townships, et cetera, explicitly stating whether data centers can be built. So there's either black and white, you can or can't do it, or if you could do it, but you can do it over these areas. Otherwise, now you're talking about, you know, interpretation of the law and, you know, kind of
right. So data centers are going to have a particular zoning designation, not just industrial, not agricultural, not residential, not retail. Data center, right, will be a thing. But let me throw something else out at you guys to just ponder and chew on. Historically, with these kinds of things, you know what happens? Well-off people don't have data centers in their developments or in their neighborhoods or in their areas. And let's put the data center in those people's neighborhoods. They don't have souls anyway, to quote The Godfather, right? And so you're going to have data centers. If you see a data center, you're going to say to yourself, ooh, must be a low-income neighborhood because they didn't have the wherewithal to keep it out of here. And so it glows at night or whatever. So, you know, JP, you're smiling. We grew up in that.
No, because I mean, one of the biggest data center areas with two huge facilities is Ashburn, Virginia.
Northern Virginia, which is a well-to-do area.
Very well-to-do, a lot of money, yeah. And I mean, what they did was they stuck them right on the side of a highway. And, you know, they're out of the way. They're really not part of the neighborhood, but, you know, they're accessible. And they're, you know, I mean, if anything, they're probably keeping volume of traffic, you know, sound down because it's filtering off of the highway there, and it's not letting it come out onto the street. I mean, it's agriculturally or ecologically, it's a good mix, right? Where they located it, but it's not indicative of a low income at all.
No, but that's a different data center, to be honest, right? You're talking about when I helped do Interliant, we had a data center in Tyson's Corner. It was the old AOL headquarters. And it was just what you're saying. It was a nondescript brick building right off the highway. And I forget how many, if we had 20,000, 30,000 square feet of data center space there. Something like that. It was a nice sized little data center. Wasn't the biggest, wasn't the smallest. That's not these AI factories that we're talking about, though. These AI factories that they're building are literally the size of Manhattan. That's awful hard to hide, you know, behind some green curtain or something. And the environmental impact's a lot bigger.
This is today's the 2025 version of the high power megawatt overhead power
Yeah.
lines, right? Do I want those running through my neighborhood? Do we want a data center at the end of those?
Yeah.
So do you think these are always going to be in rural places, or will they like try to build a data center in, I don't know, some part of the Bronx where they just want to level everything and they're just going to use it as an excuse?
Mike, I would never suggest that they do anything bad to the Bronx. You know that. But think about it. Building it in a rural area in Nebraska, to Mitch's point, not only do I got to bring the electricity there, the cooling there, the bandwidth there, whatever few jobs it brings, I got to bring the people there, right? That's a lot of theirs. Versus if I built it, in a somewhat more suburban, urban area. Wickey, I'm
Good,
sorry.
Wickey, jump in there.
Now I totally get it why people try to build up the data center on the ocean, right? And last year I saw there's a like YC startup company, they try to build up the data center or something under the ocean within the water. Now I totally get it.
Yeah, well,
There's actually a lot of good evidence that is a smart direction. One, they use the waves for energy.
Yep.
They use the temperature to keep the cooling. So a lot of what you need to run a data center is free when you go down a certain depth into the water, into the large body
And
of water.
there's no lawsuit, right? I guess.
Yes, somebody will sue somebody for sure. However, I would also point out that, as soon as we figure out that we don't need all these data centers, it'll be great for the coral. So there you go.
They'll become artificial reefs.
Yeah, official place to live. Yeah.
Okay, they call that a dual use in the business. But anyway, guys, we're about out of time. Some interesting topics to discuss here today. I enjoyed it. I hope you did. I hope all of you did as well. Hey, listen, today is Tuesday, and we actually recorded this a day early, but I want to say happy Rosh Hashanah to my landsmen and all those who celebrate. I also want to remind you that this week we are going to be live on TechStrong TV for Tech Field Day, Cyber Security Tech Field Day. And I believe that plays on, is it Tuesday and Wednesday or Wednesday and Thursday, Mitch? Something.
That I don't know, but
It's
I
2
would say
days this
usually,
week.
yeah. I would guess Wednesday, Thursday, but we'll double check. We'll post it.
So do follow along with that. Of course, we will have gang episodes. Mike Vizard will be running the show. And of course, we have TechStrong TV immediately following as usual. And you know what? We have been publishing an awful lot of content on all of these topics on our websites, whether it's securityboulevarddevops.com, TechStrong IT, TechStrong AI, platformengineering.com, Cloud Native Now, or Digital CXO, or the Futurum Group as well. I know, Mitch, you've got a lot going on there. JP, I see you time to time on LinkedIn publishing lately.
Yes, it happens to be probably my biggest source is publishing on LinkedIn. It just, you spread the content out in too many different places. It's difficult to get the attention you want. So yeah, LinkedIn's become a primary source, and then I just link to that elsewhere.
Excellent. All right.
Hey, Alan, the Tech Field Day or Security Field Day is Wednesday, Thursday.
It is
It'll be
Wednesday,
on-
Thursday.
Yeah, and the companies are folks like 1Password, HPE, Infoblox, Now, SquareX, some great companies. So it'll be very interesting. Stay tuned.
Absolutely. So check that out. All right. Hey, everyone. Wickey, JP, Mike, Mitch, thanks for joining. Thank you for watching. This is Alan Schimmel. We're out.